This upcoming weekend, AEW brings its latest pay-per-view, of course referring to AEW Full Gear, as they attempt to reclaim some of the momentum that has been lost over the past year and a half or so. Obviously, AEW has struggled with its attendance as well as its viewership, so they're hoping to get the train back on track. But of course, my name's Jose Ramos Jr. Welcome back to the J area, and let's jump right into the match card here as currently advertised and attempt to predict the outcome of each matchup. Let's start off hot here with the Fatal 4-Way Tag Team matchup that will see the reigning and defending AEW World Tag Team Champions Private Party defending their titles against the Outrunners, the House of Black, and the Acclaimed. This is a matchup that I'm looking forward to, especially given with the names that are involved. I mean, the talents that are included in this matchup is sure to be a solid matchup. Obviously, Private Party just won the tag titles, having defeated the Young Bucks, who held the titles all the way from April until, most recently. This is a matchup that I think will give an opportunity for the Outrunners to put themselves atop of the tag team division. It'll add an opportunity for the Acclaimed to continue to progress in this storyline that's teasing a little bit of a breakup between Bowens and Caster. And obviously, you add the likes of Brody King and Malachi Black, and those two are studs in their own right. But ultimately, I'm thinking we're going to have a successful title defense here for Private Party. They just won the tag titles. It was a great feel-good moment for Quinn and Zay. I don't see them losing this matchup. In regards to the other teams, I think Malachi and Brody are among two of the best that the roster has. They just haven't really found their footing in the current state of AEW. They did have a run there as the Trios champions, but I don't see them winning this matchup. As for the Outrunners, I do think they will win the tag titles eventually. They've gotten over with the crowd organically, and the fact that these guys came from nothing, from the bottom, and they've managed to carve their way into the hearts of many of the AEW faithful. I look at the Acclaimed, and it's clear that we're going down the route of breaking them up, which I'm all for. If you follow the podcast, if you follow the channel, you know how I feel about the Acclaimed. It's hit or miss with me. I think initially these guys were great. I think they were pushed to the moon, but now, for me, it's kind of getting old. I want to see something new. I want to see something fresh. Seeing Max Caster and Anthony Bowens separate certainly, I think, has an opportunity to have some legs here. I look at a guy like Anthony Bowens, I think he could be a solid babyface. I think he has the charisma. I think he has the athletic ability. I don't see why he wouldn't succeed. As for Max Caster, I think he's a solid heel. I think he's a natural born heel. We were made, rather he was made for us to not like him. I think it's the perfect match here when it comes to Caster versus Bowens, and I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere down the line we do have that matchup, maybe, potentially, coming up at World's End, Revolution, if you really wanted to push it back. But I do think that their run as a tag team has its days numbered. Nonetheless, Private Party, I do predict will go over and successfully defend those tag titles. Moving on to the next matchup here, we have MJF versus Roddy Strong. A storyline that has been addressed since the days of the Devil storyline, when MJF had returned and came out as the Devil, and then they had this convoluted storyline where Adam Cole became the Devil, and it was a whole ordeal that many fans rather choose to forget. So I, for one, was a little taken aback that we addressed it so early and so heavily. Obviously, if you're Tony Khan, you want to have a level of continuity when it comes to these stories. I don't blame him for that. But the fact that they're so heavy into it might have been a detriment to what's going on here. We know that this feud will only lead to MJF versus Adam Cole. We saw the series of matches the two had. Of course, I'm referring to Roderick Strong and Adam Cole, where whoever were to get 3 wins would earn a match against MJF at this event, and obviously Adam Cole unsuccessful, but that's the match that it's leading to. I'm thinking we're gonna go full circle. It all started, this whole MJF versus Adam Cole, the current iteration of the feud, started at World's End last year when MJF lost that title to Samoa Joe on behalf of the Devil group that is now recognized as the Undisputed Kingdom. that's where the matchup will take place. We'll have Adam Cole versus MJF for the big blow off, which is why I'm thinking and I'm picking MJF to win this matchup, defeating Roderick Strong. Plus, it's going to be the first time we've seen him in a matchup, I think, since All Out, where he had his match against Daniel Garcia. MJF goes over Roderick Strong. You expect a great showing by him. Goes over, and then we're going to lead into this feud against Adam Cole, which I'm hoping, as a pro wrestling fan and as a fan of both Cole and MJF, that'll be the definitive closing chapter between those two. Have them go do their own things, have them continue to do the best work that they can do. But I think that this is now time to move past it. Of course, we're moving next to the matchup here. Adam Page, Hangman Adam Page, will be facing off against Switchblade Jay White. This is a matchup again where the styles are in their favor. They're no strangers to one another. They've had several matches against each other, and I expect this one to be just as good. Being that Jay White had recently returned, he defeated Adam Page. I think we're going to go ahead and we're going to give the win to Adam Page. I think we're going to start building up Hangman. I wouldn't be surprised if he has another opportunity here for the world title, whether it's against Moxley or someone else, or maybe revisit a feud with Swerve. I would think that's a little too early and too premature, especially because Swerve has his own business. But I think Hangman Adam Page gets the victory here, moves on. Jay White does his own thing, Adam Page does his own thing. I don't see it moving any further down the line. Speaking of down the line, Will Ospreay, who has been one of the best acquisitions that AEW has acquired within the last calendar year. I personally actually will go on the record and say he was the best. In a year where they got the talents of like a Bobby Lashley, a Mercedes, Okada, I'm thinking Will Ospreay has been the best one. Not only in terms of crowd reception, in terms of match quality, in terms of presentation, Will Ospreay has been that money guy. So to see him included in a feud against one of his proteges, one of his friends, Kyle Fletcher, you know it's a good matchup here because the two know each other so well. And usually when opponents are either best friends, relatives, or they just have that familiarity with one another, the chemistry is off the charts. I'm expecting a great matchup here. Potentially match of the night between Fletcher and Will Ospreay. I like the fact that we're trying to do something different here with Fletcher. The whole angle about him cutting his hair might have been a hit or miss for some fans, but I understand it. I get it. You want to be a little bit different than Will Ospreay. This matchup should be great. I'm thinking they're going to give him 20 minutes plus. And I struggle with the pick here because I don't know if we're going to continue the storyline moving forward past Full Gear. I can't see Will Ospreay taking a loss unless if there's some kind of involvement from the Don Callis family. But at the same time, Kyle Fletcher gets the win here. It doesn't end. It's gonna have another one for Will Ospreay. I don't know. I'm thinking Will Ospreay goes over. I'm gonna pick Will Ospreay just because he was costed his title at Wrestle Dream. I'm gonna go Will Ospreay, and I'm hoping that it's a valiant effort from Kyle Fletcher to where it still portrays him as a strong heel and a credible heel moving forward, as maybe he starts to compete for either the TNT title, the international title, or potentially enters the Continental Classic, which is just around the corner as well. Moving from there, of course, I referred to Swerve Strickland. He will be having a matchup against the newly acquired talents of Bobby Lashley. What I like about AEW's pay-per-view structure here is there's a lot of variety. And conversely, with the WWE, everything feels like it has a big match feel to it because of the story presence. AEW might not have the strongest sense in storylines, but the contrasting styles of matches really provide a variety, a buffet of sorts when it comes to the styles. So when you have a Swerve Strickland and a Bobby Lashley here on the card versus that of a Will Ospreay matchup, you get a fresh take on another match. Bobby Lashley, of course, making his recent debut on Dynamite, has his first match against Swerve Strickland, which should be a hard-hitting matchup. I'm expecting Swerve to be presented as the fighting babyface, as Bobby Lashley is the monster heel who he cannot overcome. We know Bobby Lashley will be accompanied by MVP and Shelton Benjamin in some fashion. And with that being said, I can't see Bobby Lashley losing on account of having that much backup, but also he can't lose his first match with the company. I think this is probably the easiest bet to make when it comes to the Full Gear pay-per-view card. Bobby Lashley goes over strong over Swerve Strickland, not over Roddy Strong. And I'm thinking as a way to protect Swerve, he's going to put on the Hurt Lock and probably have Swerve pass out. I don't think he taps out. I don't think he takes a pin. I'm thinking we're going to figure out a way to maintain that momentum of Swerve Strickland as well as maintain heat in this rivalry. And we're going to have Swerve Strickland pass out on account of a Hurt Lock by Bobby Lashley. Which leads us to our 3 matches when it comes to a championship on the line. Let's start with the TBS champion. Mercedes Mone defends her title against Kris Statlander, who has made quite the impression against the formerly known Sasha Banks. She has attacked Camille. She has rendered Camille rather injured as she was last seen in a sling. She, body slammed, or rather bulldozed Camille and Mercedes Mone through a wall. I think Kris Statlander has been presented as a great threat to Mercedes Mone and her title reign as the TBS champion. In fact, Statlander is a former TBS champion in her own right, as she defeated Jade Cargill, who was on an undefeated streak of sorts during her tenure with the company. Even with Camille injured, even with the level of momentum that Statlander is on, I can't see Mercedes losing this matchup. I feel like everything is in place for a Kris Statlander victory, which is why I think it's one of those deals where they're having you think one thing, but ultimately, this is what happens instead. I think Mercedes Mone goes over, she defends her title, she retains her title, and she will continue this title reign for a little bit longer, but I do think we're on the cusp of a title change at some point. And where I say the TBS championship may not change hands, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to tell you my prediction right now. The TNT championship will change hands. Jack Perry defends his title against Daniel Gacia, who has developed such a level of momentum on his side. And to see the character growth, let alone the in-ring ability of Garcia, I think it's high time we reward him with some kind of accolade, some kind of recognition, and I think that'll come in the form of a TNT championship win. Jack Perry did some solid work as a heel, but now that the Bucks are gone, Okada hasn't really been seen on TV as of late. They're just leaving Jack Perry here off to the side. And I know he's been talking to Garcia, saying you're not ready. I think that's going to be something of a key element in the matchup here, where he continues to taunt Garcia, saying you're not ready. Let's say the crowd begins to support Garcia. They chant his name. They roar with every attack that Garcia throws at Jack Perry, and he continues to tell him you're not ready, until ultimately Garcia tells him you're wrong, I am ready, and he defeats Jack Perry, and we get a fresh reign here when it comes to the TNT title, dispatching of that old, or rather that new title design by Jack Perry. And I'm thinking that'll be the good feel-good moment of the pay-per-view, giving Garcia some flowers here, just like we did with Private Party a couple weeks ago when they won the tag titles. And I tell you that's the feel-good moment of the pay-per-view, because ultimately in the main event, Orange Cassidy versus Jon Moxley for the world title, a rematch from last year's all-out pay-per-view as well as Full Gear. It's a match that has been a little bit polarizing for some members of professional wrestling fandom, whether you're on the internet, whether you're watching the show, whether you're one of the talking heads on all of YouTube. I look at this as a great opportunity for both members involved. Moxley and the Death Riders have been presented as this formidable force in AEW, trying to force the hand of all these baby faces who have been dancing and singing and celebrating over what? Moxley wants to reintroduce that level of grit into All Elite Wrestling. Meanwhile, a guy like Orange Cassidy, who's a day one member of All Elite Wrestling, does not like what he sees in the form of the Death Riders. They attacked his friend Bryan Danielson. They attack his good friend in Chuck Taylor. And obviously he's out for retribution. And it's the most active we've seen, the most animated we've seen from Orange Cassidy since his debut in All Elite Wrestling. But I don't think it's his story that we're telling. Jon Moxley will defeat Orange Cassidy. He will successfully defend that world title. And Orange Cassidy is going to be left questioning himself. He said every time he stepped in the ring with one of those guys, whether it be Claudio, Wheeler Yuta, Pac, Jon Moxley, he changed every time. And I think this is going to be another example of that. Something has to change for Orange Cassidy in order for him to become the star that a lot of people think he can be. Because I think ultimately, and I'll keep pushing this idea, it's Darby Allin. Darby Allin will be the one to defeat Jon Moxley, to unseat him at the top of All Elite Wrestling. He may not have been able to climb the Mount Everest, challenge, but I think we will see in the near future him climb up the ranks atop of All Elite Wrestling. But nonetheless, those are my predictions when it comes to AEW Full Gear. I want to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this predictions video, go ahead and like the video, comment down below some of your predictions in regard to the AEW card, as well as the current status of the storylines that are being told on AEW TV. And be sure to hit a good old-fashioned DDT on the subscribe button in order to keep up to date with all the videos such as these that I present here on YouTube. With that being said, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. Thank you again for stopping by and watching this predictions video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.